Check 1 2, testing 1 2. Mic check 1 2. They still gonna ain't it gonna have Tommy talking first? It's no intro. It normally has an intro. Grace and peace. We are so thankful to have you here with us. Grace and peace. We're so thankful to have you here with us tonight for our midweek worship in a conversational setting. You know, our theme this month continues to be forward, which is greater, our history or our destiny. And we've had these conversations on Wednesdays, now all month. We started with community with Mr. Hood, and last Wednesday we had education with Dr. Amy Carter. I'm so thankful and proud to have as our guest tonight Mr. Tracy Alford, also known as Trey amongst our community. I will let him introduce himself here shortly, but you can see there on the screen. But he's here tonight for us to discuss finance, money, management of money, as an individual, even as a small business, as a minority in this state and time in which we live. So, Trey, thank you for being here on tonight.
Yes, sir, Pastor. Thank you for having me.
So, Trey, if you will, kind of tell them what your title is and what you currently do in the area of finance for Meridian, Mississippi, Lauderdale County, actually, I think statewide possibly.
Sure. Again, my name is Tracy Alford. I am employed with Citizens National Bank here in Meridian, Mississippi.
Yeah.
I'm currently the Community Development Director as well as the CRA Officer for the bank. I am responsible for our CRA operation statewide. Also, as part of all of that, manage our small business or SBA loan portfolio. As Community Development Director, that entails a lot. I do everything from traveling around the state and doing financial literacy exercises with different organizations. So it just kind of runs the gamut. I also meet with a lot of small business owners or prospective small business owners, homeowners or prospective homeowners, and discuss with them some of the steps they need to take in order to achieve home ownership or in order to start that small business that they've always dreamed of starting.
Okay, that's great. Interesting. Good stuff. So tonight we're going to try to take several of the key components to finance, and we're going to try to wrap that within this portion of time that we have. So we're going to talk a little bit about tonight banking, the importance of being a banking citizen in this day and time, pros to that, some of the wrongful myths as it relates to that kind of serve as a impediment to some, their decision to get banked and become a part of a banking community. Also, we're going to talk about credit some, home ownership. We're going to also talk about credit scores and how that works. And then lastly, we're going to deal with the small business piece. What is the advantages and opportunities for those who are interested or who already may be a small business owner? So Trey, it was amazing to me, I was reading not too long ago that it's a lot of people, but in this aspect, we're talking Black History Month, there's a lot of African American individuals in the population of the United States who are underbanked, meaning they do not have even the basics of a basic checking account.
Yes.
Now, why is that not good?
Well, several reasons, but one of the main things that I would point out about that is if you're not if you don't have a checking account, savings account, or you have not established a relationship with a bank, that's just simply not good, because there are so many advantages that go along with having that relationship at your bank. And it really doesn't matter if you're just a normal consumer of basic financial services like checking accounts, savings accounts, whether you're a small business owner or whether you're a homeowner. You really need to develop a relationship, and much of this conversation will really hinge on that relationship. But you really need to develop a relationship with a bank in your local community. In this case, here in the Meridian area, you know, it's just not enough to be able to go to that. And this is nothing against finance companies.
Right.
I mean, they play a role. But at the end of the day, it's just not the best option. I'll say it that way. A lot of people, especially African Americans, really rely on the consumer finance companies, or as we call them, finance companies, or payday lenders, or those really more predatory lenders for loans, because the access to that capital is typically so easy to get.
Yes. So real quick, I wanted to make sure that everybody understands what he means when he says predatory. Basically, if you don't have a banking account, if you don't have any kind of means or access to cash, and you have to go to a place like a finance company to get cash, or a payday loan to get cash, what makes those entities predatory is that the interest rate in which they charge, not even mentioning the hidden fees, really puts you at a disadvantage as relates to the amount of money you receive versus the amount of money you're going to have to pay back.
That's exactly right. And if you took the time to establish a relationship with a bank, which many people may or may not know now, have really done a lot in the way of amending some of the traditional underwriting criteria, in order to make access to capital, or let me just say it a different way, in order to make it easier to access capital through a bank or through a credit union, where you're gonna pay a lower interest rate, and that matters.
Yeah, definitely. You know, when you're dealing with a population of people who are underbanked in this day and time, specifically in the African American community, many times people think that if I put my money in the bank, like, oh, it's something that the government is going to do, or oh, if I put, they're going to take some of my money and say it's gone. So all these crazy myths that are not true serve as things that prevent people from wanting to even put their money in a bank, to have a checking account or a debit card. Sometimes people mismanage money and had fees and had to get their bank account closed, and those prior experiences serve as the voices in their present. But what many people do not know, what many people do not know is that your refusal to bank is making other people rich.
That's exactly right.
I mean, it's crazy what liquor stores are charging to cash checks. I mean, what certain fees that grocery stores or perhaps other places who say if you don't have an account here, we have to charge you this. That's money that can go into people's pocket.
That's exactly right. And I think what serves to mask some of the disadvantages of doing business with a check cashing service, a liquor store, what have you, I don't think that people really stop in many cases to think about the long-term compounding effect of those elevated fees that they're paying for those services. You know, most people just think of it, you know, as really a transaction by transaction, or on a transaction by transaction basis. So if you're paying $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 in order to go in and cash your Social Security check or your tax check, they really don't think about it because they're really thinking about it that one time. But what I would challenge you to do is to think about that over a period of time.
Yes.
You know, for instance, if you're paying, I don't know, $10 to go in and cash a check even every 2 weeks, that may not seem like a lot when you pay it that one time or each time that you pay it. Mm-hmm. But when you stop and think about over the period of 26 weeks,
right?
You know, I paid $10 every time. Well, that's $260 that I could have had to invest in some other way.
Yes. That's a power bill and a water bill for some people 1 month that you've
exactly
given
right.
away just from not having a checking account. And now, if I'm not mistaken, I know that you only represent one bank, Citizens National Bank, and we're thankful for you representing them even here tonight. But there are other banks also in the city, and now it's not that difficult having a checking account.
No,
you can open it, I mean, for $100, and they don't keep that $100. That's your $100 that's in your account. That's your money. You know.
That's a great point. And what people should know is that banks have really stepped up to the challenge that they've been presented, not only by the consumers and some of the competition that comes from some of those alternative services, but also by our regulators.
Yeah.
Banks are heavily regulated, be it by the OCC, FDIC, or the Fed. And what these regulators challenge us to do on a regular basis, actually, is to look for creative ways, innovative ways to reduce the number or the percentage of unbanked or underbanked individuals in the country. And so one of the ways that we've done that is by creating some of these alternative checking accounts. For instance, and I'm not here to plug, but
sure.
Citizens National Bank has an alternative checking account that you can get even if you've had problems with checking accounts in the past.
Say that again.
Citizens National Bank, we have alternative checking accounts that you can get even if you've had some problems in the past at other banks. So if you had a checking account at Bank A or Bank B over here and you got in some trouble with that particular account, and for
it was
whatever
left
reason,
in the negative,
exactly,
and they closed it.
That's exactly right. And you think in your mind that now you can't go to another bank and open a checking account. Well, that's no longer the case. There are what we call second chance checking accounts available.
Second chance checking account.
And we call it the clean slate checking account.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So people should know that there are, 30, 40 years ago, these kinds of accounts didn't exist.
Right.
So people really looked at banks for a long time, me included, before I started working in banking, looked at banks as really being conservative organizations that were really out to bank the best of the best.
Yeah.
That's no longer the case. These days, banks are really reaching out to the community and trying to do everything that we possibly can to shrink that number of unbanked or underbanked individuals, which in Mississippi is pretty high.
Yeah, and I want people to understand, back in history, people withdrew all of cashed their checks at the bank, never put anything in an account, put everything they had in their pockets because it took all of their money to cover their expenses.
Right.
But when you're living in a space where there is money left over, even if it's $50 a pay period, you should put your money in the bank, pay your bills out of your account. It's amazing now, not only credit cards, but mortgages, all kinds of things now want to know, do you have a checking account?
That's exactly
Or do you have a savings account?
Right.
And I think it's important as a people that we teach our children now
Right.
the importance of banking,
Right.
having their money in the bank,
Right.
monitoring their money. And so let's talk about that a little bit from the budgeting piece. You know, we have financial literacy classes here called the Millionaires Club. And so we understand money needs a boss. If you don't boss it, it will boss you.
Yeah, definitely.
And so we always talk about that's why there's a head on every coin and a head on every dollar bill,
Right.
because money has to have a boss.
That's right.
Well, when you're looking at budgeting and managing money, I think checking accounts makes more sense to people when they actually keep up with their spending.
Right.
And, you know, usually when you open an account, they're going to give you, well, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but they'll give you some information with your checking account on it,
Yeah.
information on it.
Right.
They give you some, used to give you starter checks
Uh-huh.
until your checks come in if you order some.
Right.
But then they also give you something called a check register
That's right. Yeah.
so that you can write down what you spend.
Right.
So you can keep an account of what's available to you. I think that is so important because we run into overdraft fees, we get discouraged, we just close the account, then we come in and say, no, I had this amount of money, y'all charging me all of this, my next check is gone. You know, I've been on the other side of those conversations,
Sure.
but we solve those things by being stewards over our spending.
That's exactly
so that
right.
just because it shows one amount on our screen,
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily mean that's exactly what we have to spend.
That's a great point. And you know, I go back to a point that you made, a word that you use, and it's the B word, the budgeting.
Yeah.
I cannot, and this is really my soapbox if I have one, I cannot emphasize to you, to everybody that's listening now, the importance of establishing, and it's not enough to just establish, okay?
Yeah.
But establishing and then adhering to, sticking to a budget.
Yeah.
When I go around and I do financial literacy classes, I always start those classes with a conversation around budgeting. And the reason that I do that is because what you'll find in finance, sitting in the seats that we sit in and looking at credit reports and all of the different financial information that we take into consideration when making a credit decision, what you find more often than not is the one problem people have
Yeah.
is budgeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And many of the other problems there or things that they are experiencing is simply a symptom of that larger problem.
Budgeting is the root.
Budgeting is the root.
Fix the root, you change the fruit.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I tell people all the time, that ain't the devil keeping you from writing down what you spend. Like, oh, it's a devil. No, it's not the devil.
Right.
That's discipline.
That's exactly what
You know, that's now there may be generational mentalities that are working
Right,
against you.
right.
But that is a discipline to keep up with what we're spending.
Definitely, and I like that word discipline because that's exactly what it is. And understand that it takes a certain level of discipline just to begin to establish a budget, to go through the exercise of writing down your monthly income and expenditures every month and keeping up with that every day or every week. But it takes a whole other level of discipline in order to adhere to what that budget is telling you.
Yes.
Because if you listen to that budget will tell you, it will actually show you where you're wasting money.
Yeah.
It will show you where the waste is coming from. I'll
That's
give you an
right.
example. I sat down and looked at my budget a couple of years ago, and I noticed that I was spending, for me and my son, I was spending more than $200 for cell phones. Okay, and so when I took a look at that budget, that jumped off the page at me, and what it told me is you need to look for a way to reduce this particular line item in your budget. And I
Yeah.
did that and was able to actually cut it in more than half.
Wow.
You could likely do the same thing with your cable bill if you sit down and look at that.
Yeah.
So budgets are powerful, and we get in trouble when we refuse to listen to what that budget is telling us.
Yeah.
Or when we just simply refuse to live by that budget. We try to live outside that budget. And that's when you find yourself doing things like living off of credit cards.
Yeah.
People
Now
do it
you've
every
gotten
day.
out of your means. And
Beyond
that
your
happens a lot.
means.
That happens a lot within our community. I try to tell people all the time, it's important that your budget doesn't become just a sheet of paper.
Yeah.
Or a document you pull up on your computer.
That's exactly
But
right.
your budget has to have a voice.
It does.
And so if my budget tells me I only have $60 left at payday, then I may not be able to go see Charlie Wilson in Atlanta with my friend girls, or be able to go to the Lakers game in New Orleans with my homeboy.
That's right.
Because my budget told me that.
Right.
Now that takes a lot of discipline, but long-term wise,
Yes.
the preventions of going into next pay period already in the hole,
Right.
or already in the red,
Right.
or having to pay someone else back,
Right.
long-term wise puts you ahead.
Definitely.
Now, so we've established it's important that you have a basic checking account, right? And pay your bills out of that account,
Exactly.
you know. Secondly, we said you need a budget, okay? Money has to have a boss. Now, let's talk about credit, because if someone is watching us, they already have a checking account, they already have a budget, but they're wanting to improve their credit capacity, okay? So they can maybe qualify for more in regards to a loan, or they have plans to buy a home or refinance a home. Let's talk about a little about restoring credit, and then also improving credit.
Okay. Well, regardless of whether you're just starting out, you're a college graduate, just getting out of college, or you're a more seasoned individual who may have had some credit challenges in the past. So whether you're trying to establish credit or reestablish credit, I think it really begins with understanding what goes into calculating that credit score. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. So when you look at, if you think of it as a pie, the biggest piece of that pie is really going to be on-time payments.
Okay.
Okay. So on-time payments are going to represent, I don't know, I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 35% of what the credit bureaus use to calculate your credit.
So 35% of what impacts my score is on me to make my payments timely.
That's exactly
35%, okay?
Right. And it's important, Pastor, to understand too. A lot of people feel like, as crazy as this may sound, a lot of people feel as if my payment was due on the 1st and I forgot it, it slipped my mind, I'm not budgeting, and I remember on the 10th, then it's too late. I may as well kick the can down the road and just make that payment next month. I may pay 2 of them next month. That it just does not work that way. So it's important to understand, and a lot of people don't know this, but technically, while you may be late with the creditor after, I don't know, 10, 15 days, it's not going to show up on your credit report unless you are over 30 days.
That's exactly right.
So it's important to understand, even though you may run a few days late or even a week or two paying that bill, when you sit down and if you're budgeting and you look at these bills that you have, if I missed this particular bill a couple of weeks ago and I got a couple of more weeks to pay this one, it makes sense to start with that one before it reports on my credit history.
So if the payment was due on the 15th, you realize on the 20th you hadn't paid it.
Yeah.
Don't wait till next month
That's
on the
right.
15th. If you pay it on the 20th or the 25th, it's still not 30 days late from the 15th.
That's exactly right.
All right? So I hope we understand that. He's saying you still have a window of 30 days from your due date. You want to beat that. So if you realize you're 10 days after your due date, go ahead and make that payment to prevent that 30-day late from your credit score, because as he stated, 35% of what determines your score is your timely payment.
That's exactly right. And I go back to something you said in church one day, and I'll never forget this. You told people that if I owe someone money, but I don't have their money, then I owe them a conversation.
Yes, I believe in that. That's right.
And that is so true. So even if you're not gonna be able to make that payment, and in your mind, I just don't have what it takes to make that payment this month, pick the phone up, because this is such a big deal. This is such a large piece of what ultimately goes into calculating your score. Pick the phone up and call that creditor and make arrangements. Sometimes they can make arrangements in such a way that it never even hits your credit report.
Yeah, and I mean, even in remembering my lending years, handling a past due customer who communicates with you
Right.
is totally different from handling a past due customer who never says anything.
That's exactly
You know,
right.
so people, what he's saying is, when you don't have it, again, you owe those people a conversation.
That's right.
Because that goes a long way.
That's
That
exactly
goes a long way. So 35% is made up of me making my payments on time. What's the next percentage piece?
Well, so if you think about the next most significant thing that goes into calculating that score, well, that's going to be what they call, or what we call, credit utilization.
Okay.
All right. So think about credit utilization the same way you think about pouring water into a cup.
Yeah.
You know, as you pour water into a cup, you're utilizing more and more of that cup as that water fills that cup. So you liken that to a credit card. So if I've got a credit card, and with that credit card, the company gives me $1,000 credit limit, that credit limit is just like the top of that cup, okay?
Gotcha.
That's the top of my limit. That's
Right.
Okay, and so I begin to use that credit card. So it's just like water filling up that cup. Well, it's important to understand that the credit bureaus are they're actually monitoring you and your use of that credit card. And they do that when that credit card company reports back to them in 30 days or whatever the reporting cycle is. So as a consumer, what you want to do is you want to be sure to stay at 30% or less in terms of how much of that credit limit you utilize. In that same example, $1,000 credit limit, then I know I need to keep my balance on my credit card at $300 or less.
Okay, so 30% of the credit line max or credit card max is where you want to stay below.
Exactly.
It's important we understand that. So even on purchases that may exceed that 30%, you want to make sure that you pay that balance back down.
Exactly.
He's not necessarily saying that, so if you got a $1,000 credit card and you need to go buy a refrigerator and the refrigerator is $500, but you don't want to go over $300, it's okay if you make that purchase. You want to pay that $200 or $250
Right.
down right away to keep that balance at 30%. Okay,
That's
so
exactly right.
we have when I pay on time, my payment, my integrity, my repayment schedule, and then I also now have the usage. They want usage. People always say, "Oh, credit, and debt," but you know, and that's where I've had several members, non-members, at times advising and counseling people through financial storms and oftentimes there's a name that comes up every time, Dave Ramsey. And so Dave Ramsey said, and I said, you know, Dave Ramsey doesn't believe in debt, but the truth of the matter is you need debt at times. You need debt for many purposes.
I agree.
You can't improve your credit score without debt.
That's exactly right.
You know?
That's exactly right. Many people really demonize credit cards, and you know, if you use credit cards the wrong way, they can be one of the worst things that have ever happened to you. But what people don't understand is if you use credit cards, or really any form of revolving debt for that matter, it can actually impact your score in ways that really any other credit can't. Because if you think about a credit card, you've got the ability to, the 35% of the pie, I'm going to make the payments on time, right?
Yeah.
So that's 35% of it right there.
Yeah.
But the credit card is also going to give you the ability to control that credit utilization rate.
Right.
Which is another 30%. Well,
So
that's 65% of the pie right there.
Yes.
So if you manage the credit cards in the right way, you can actually move your score faster than you can using any other form of credit.
And in case you're behind an 8-ball on a credit score right now, this is the first part of the year. You're going to see a great increase of opportunities sent to you in the mail, with some may be as little as 6% no interest. Some may be 12 months. Some may be 18 months no interest. So if you're in a windfall of credit right now, it's to your advantage to transfer those balances to an account where you're not being charged interest and try to aggressively pay that balance down now with that 0% interest credit card. Okay?
Right.
And I think they're good to have for emergency. Now, I grew up with the mentality of, you need to have cash. Don't use credit card. You be your own credit card. And true, a little short story. So I never had credit cards. My wife would try to tell me the importance of having a credit card, and I was telling her, she was from the synagogue of Satan, and that was not the will of God. That was demonology. Save your money, have your own. And so, long story short, we go on a trip, and we get some kind of way with the flights. We had to change our flights due to weather and things of that sort, so we needed a rental car. Right. We got to the airport, they wouldn't let us depart. So I got to get back to a hotel till the next day.
Right.
I think I had preached somewhere. She was with me. We go to get a rental car. I pull out my debit card.
No good.
They would not take a debit card. Guess who had a credit card?
Your wife.
First lady.
First
God
lady.
have mercy. Lord have mercy. So at that point, I began to realize that you need a credit card for an emergency. And I want to throw that out there. That's another reason to have it for
Absolutely.
Cases like that. Because some people don't take debit cards for some reason.
That's exactly right. And I will say this about credit cards, and I guess it's really true of anything. While they can be a great thing and a really good tool to use to improve your credit, do be careful with them. What I do not agree with is the people that really think that they've got to have a credit card for everything. Yeah. I got to have a Walmart credit card. I got to have a Sam's credit card. I need a gas credit card.
Yeah. Haircut credit card.
That's exactly right.
Oh, no. Please speak to that.
Yes, if you stop and think about it, if you've got a Visa card, which is accepted in most of the retail locations that you'll frequent, or even online, I just don't know why you would need a gas card too. I mean, if you stop and think about it, I don't need a Shell card if Shell accepts Visa.
That's correct.
And what you often get into is you have a balance on this card, that card, and before you know it, you've got 10 credit cards with balances. And again, it goes back to something we said earlier. A lot of people, they think transactionally. So, well, it's only $25 more, it's only $35 or $45. But when you start adding all those together, $35 a month on 10 credit cards.
Yes.
That's $350 a month. So I would be conservative in terms of how many credit cards. I
think 2 would be enough.
I think 2 is plenty.
I think the Lord is saying that tonight to us. 2. You don't need but 2.
Yeah.
For emergencies. Then you have cards that can actually build points, redeemable points, cash, and so those purchases because every time you go somewhere, they're going to try to get you to get their card.
That's right.
But if you have a card that's giving you incentives for transactions, then what you're gaining by that one card many times can be very equivalent to what you're gaining by signing up for that card. And it doesn't also look good on your credit to have all those open revolving accounts.
That's exactly right. And I was going to say, and oftentimes you go to one of the department stores and they're running a sale. And on top of the sale they make you you can get an additional 15% off today if you apply for this credit card. That's not good. You don't want to get in the habit of allowing people to just pour your credit, because every time you make an application for credit, that shows up as what we refer to as a hard inquiry on your credit report. So it's listed on your credit report. And that actually, when you think about that pie that we talked about, that's actually about 10% of that pie. So if you've got, what is this, February? If you've already just this year got 4 or 5 inquiries on your credit report, that's too many.
Yeah.
That's too many. You don't want to get in the habit of allowing people to just pour your credit time after time after time again, because it impacts your credit score negatively in general. There are some exceptions if you're out shopping for a vehicle or something like that, but in general, it's going to impact your score negatively.
And now when we talk about home ownership, I'm a big advocate for home ownership. It's my heart's desire that everybody experience not only the purchase of the home, but the benefits of having a home. And so we started years ago a No More Rent campaign, and I've talked to other pastors about it. That program has extended with a different spin on it in other churches and congregations across the country. And I just believe that it benefits African Americans And I think it's important for the generations after them to see.
Absolutely.
Not only real estate, I always said, stomp your feet. Okay, that's real estate. It said that's the only thing that they're not creating any more of.
Right.
The earth is not growing.
Right.
So to have real estate is to have a asset, something that can become of a benefit later in life.
Yeah.
And so real quickly, just kind of speak to opportunities that may be available for homeowners now. They may be a first-time homeowner or something like that.
Well, and I share your passion for home ownership. When you think about African Americans in this country, we're really lagging behind. Only about 4 out of every 10 African Americans own their own homes, compared to about 7 out of every 10 of our counterparts. So definitely share your passion for home ownership. One of the best ways to build wealth. And there are a number of different programs that are out there available for those that are looking to purchase or even in some cases build a home of their own. I'll say this about home ownership, similar to what we said about checking accounts earlier. If you go back 20, 30 years ago, many people thought that it was difficult, if not impossible, to walk into a bank and finance a home of their own. Well, that's changed.
Yeah.
For some of the same reasons, things have changed around some of the other financial products that we offer. We were challenged in a lot of ways by our regulators, or some of the competition in the marketplace to create some innovative products around home ownership. I'll give you an example. One of the products we have at the bank is our Home Opportunity Loan, specifically designed for first-time home buyers. And with that Home Opportunity Loan, what we've done is we have made a conscious effort to go in and identify some of the impediments that have really impeded people's ability to purchase a home in the past.
Yeah.
20% down payments, cash reserves of 3 to 6 months. Well, we've taken those underwriting requirements and we have relaxed, or in some cases even eliminated, some of those impediments. With this particular product now, you can purchase a home with as little as 2% in the way of a down payment. We don't require any cash reserves. Credit scores, which was another big deal around some of the traditional products, credit scores as low as 625 to qualify. So we have, and even with that product, there's some down payment assistance that, depending on your income level, that we may be able to attach to that product for up to $10,000. So we've really, in our minds, really lowered or eliminated some of the hurdles that a lot of people have faced in the past when trying to purchase a home.
And I've seen people who started with just a desire, a dream.
Yeah.
And that dream resulted in them sitting in an attorney's office signing closing papers.
That's right.
I believe that when you get serious about vision and particularly home ownership, there are all kinds of things that can avail themselves to you.
That's right.
Pre-approval. And I want to encourage somebody today who have the desire but are too shameful or just too busy or too discouraged from the possibility of it not happening. Right. I mean, I want to challenge you to go ahead and get you a pre-approval.
That's right.
You can go to the bank. That's no charge for you.
Right.
Ask for a mortgage officer and say, I want to do a pre-approval process. They'll tell you how much you qualify for. They'll also go through, if you don't qualify, what you need to do to get qualified. But to motivate you while you're in your forward process to home ownership, go ahead and call on some realtors and tell them to show you some houses. I believe something calibrates within our mindset and within our drive when we position ourselves for exposure of such. You know, so go walk through you some homes and walk through some yards and smell, and then make sure they show you a brand new home. You never know what God is going to do when your efforts align with what you're believing for.
That's right.
And so you can get a pre-approval again for no charge. You get realtors galore that can show you, you know, what you need and it can show you what's available to you based on school districts, based on amounts. I think we have 3 realtors even here within the church that you can requests that can help you at any time. And so I really wanted to mention that. I know Mr. Heath is one. I think Mr. Welch is one, and Ms. Wooten is as well. So there are people here that will do that for you, and I think that's important. Now, to the small business owner in this COVID space, has really maybe, depending on what their business was, what have been either impacted due to the lack of activity. If they was in a physical space, those who have done things online has saw a great increase of business interaction, consumers and things of that sort. But to those who are in small businesses or who desire to take what they're already doing and make it official as a business, there are many programs out there available for them as well. And I know for the sake of time, we're almost at our time, but there's a new small business product that you all came about to be able to help small businesses. Well, you will speak to that as well.
Sure. So, and what we did with these small business products is we intentionally targeted what we call disadvantaged enterprises. And when you think about disadvantaged enterprises, those are going to be some of the minority-owned small business, women-owned small businesses that are owned by the disabled or who have products that target the disabled. And with these particular products, and we've got two, we've got one that's a line of credit, and we've got one that's more of a traditional loan. It goes up to $350,000. And with these products, we've done the same thing on the business side that we did on the consumer side with some of those traditional underwriting criteria that really serve to impede people's ability to be approved for some of these loans. So we've lowered the credit score, and on these, we've lowered the credit score on them to 625. So there's an entry point for you on that small business line of credit with a 625 credit score, as well as this actual small business loan with a credit score that low. Now, there's some things that you have to do when your credit score is that low. We do ask you to offset that lower credit score. We ask you to attend some of the small business workshops that we sponsor.
Sure.
And you can use those certificates, bring those certificates in.
Literacy piece.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Strategies for Success.
Strategies for Success is one of them, in order to qualify for the loan. So basically what you're doing is you're using that certificate to tell that lender, I know my credit score may not be what you typically require, but I have put forth the extra effort to go and position myself, prepare myself for success as a small business owner by attending some of these courses. And we use that certificate and your efforts really to mitigate that lower credit score.
That makes sense. And when you attend these things, that's right. Get certificates, get notifications that confirm your attendance, because you never know how those things can play a part in a decline or an approval.
That's exactly
Real quickly, I want to add to and clarify what he meant when he says a home equity loan, a home equity line, business loan, and business line of credit. Trey, or you will clarify that for them, because I think the line can be more advantageous over time, depending upon
the purpose.
Right.
Yeah. So when you think about in general capital to fund your small business, there are a couple of different ways you can do it. You can do it with a line of credit, or you can do it with a more of a fixed product like a loan. On the line of credit side, we typically use a line of credit for short-term working capital needs. Okay.
So if you're in a hard spot, need to buy some inventory.
Yes.
Right now your sales will low this quarter.
Right.
You pull on your line of credit.
That's exactly
to get you back where things are rolling well.
Right. And so that small business owner needs to understand their cash conversion cycle, and so you would use that line of credit exactly like you said to purchase some of those assets, and then you sell those assets, turn them into cash, and then pay that line of credit down, do that all over again. Okay. And then on the loan side of things,
and that's there on the line. Even if you pay down to zero, if you need something next month,
that's exactly
you can go back and pull on that line.
That's exactly right. So, and the advantage there is you have access to capital without having to reapply for it every time.
Exactly.
On the loan side, you would use the loan, and again, it's up to $350,000 for more permanent.
Okay.
Some of the permanent needs. So, if you were going to buy a piece of equipment, then you would use that loan to purchase that piece of equipment that you need. So if you're, I don't know, if you're a truck driver that's over the road and you need to purchase a truck, well, obviously you're going to do that with the loan instead of the line of credit, because that's more of a long-term asset.
And lastly, as we wrap up, and again, I told you we wanted to cover, even before we started here in preparation of our thoughts, as much as we could within this time frame. And Trey, thank you so much for extending yourself. And I do want you all to know that in the event if there's a desire to do some things, small business, home ownership, that business line of credit you're interested in, feel free to reach out to Trey.
Absolutely.
And he will then be able to direct you in what areas in which you need to go concerning those things.
Right.
You know, in our conclusion, I do, when you can, I want to encourage us to support other black businesses.
Sure, absolutely.
Oftentimes, black businesses, black barbers, black doctors, black lenders, black attorneys are oftentimes struggling for clients.
Right.
And there are times when I understand that due to the lack of follow through, or due to we may feel poor service or product, we may prefer others. But when we've had an experience that was comforting and assuring, to continue to support those business owners, no matter if they're in real estate, if they're in jewelry, you know, if they are selling products, insurance products, to support, because studies have proven that in the Caucasian world, the Caucasian dollar stays within Caucasians' hands 15 times. It passes 15 times before it goes to someone else outside of their own.
That's amazing.
The African American dollar passes one time before it's out of the African American circulation. So look at how many times, 15 times, 15 different entities have benefit from the spending of your currency. Wherein in the African American aspect, it's only touched once. It leaves your hand and it never makes it back to. And so we have an opportunity to empower others, which I believe is important. I'm not just pushing that along as I balance that, but I think we should keep that in perspective. I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for tuning in tonight as we have discussed finance in the African American community and in the world, in the United States right now, in the space whereby we live. Again, I want to pray as we get ready to go. And we'll see after prayer, we'll touch base with you on Sunday. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for those tonight who have availed themselves to hear. God, those who may have been encouraged, clarity in some form. God, some have been stirred to a particular direction. I pray, God, you continue to bless their efforts. I pray we understand that budgeting and management is a private thing. Nobody's often cheering us on. It's not before a crowd. It's not on a screen. It's not with a microphone. It's a private discipline that leads to public demonstration. Amen. God, out of all things, I pray wisdom be released tonight upon us so we can be even the more greater stewards over the substance whereby you've trusted us. I pray blessings of increase, blessings of prosperity as we move forward. In Jesus' name, amen. We'll see you on Sunday.